Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your producer and empowerment strategist. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about side effects, recipes, and protocols with Dr. Christiane Northrup. This is her fourth time on the show, and I can say this, I believe, on my podcast with all safety. We're talking about spike proteins. I don't say that on the YouTube video because I've been censored once already, and I'm trying to keep my YouTube channel up and running and continue to provide good information that is needed to people. So I don't ever say that word. I never say spike protein. We talk about proteins on the show, and that's the reason why I asked her to come back. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. We talk a lot about the recipes towards the end of it, and I get really emotional. You don't see it very much or hear it. She tells a story about something that's happened when she was walking past a neighbor, and it just really struck me and like right through the heart. And I started to cry. And then when she started talking, I muted myself and was really pleased as I was editing to realize that you couldn't see me because of the kind of view that I have on the video, because I had tissues. I literally had to pull tissues because I had to hold myself back from really letting go. So with that said, when we talk about recipes and protocols, I talk a little bit about a pine protocol that I have from a local business here, narayanbeauty.com. That's Narayan, Narayan, narayanbeauty.com. And it's a whole, again, there's like 5 different parts of this pine protocol, but I've talked with Narayan, and she is willing to give my community a 10% discount if you're interested in purchasing any of her products. So you would use the code JJ at checkout, just 2 capital J's, and you can get 10% off not only the Pine Protocol, but anything else that you see. But that's the reason why I'm sending you there, because when I got a hold of it, I wanted to educate people on the spike protein effects and sort of detoxing options for people. And I wanted to be able to give you a bit of a discount. We also talk about homeopathy, and I want to remind you of Jeannie Peters. If you have been listening for a while, you can go to nourishingwellness.com if you are interested in working with someone who is very fine-tuned in specifically, personally choosing remedies for you homeopathically. So again, Jeannie Peters at nourishingwellness.com. Both of those links will be in the show notes. And I'm not going to introduce Dr. Northrup. She's been on the show 4 times. She's a legend. She is also one of the most highly regulated and censored people out there because of her truth and threat to the narrative that we all have going on right now. And again, with all respect to all of you who've taken, you've done things and you've made your choices, and we're not disrespecting anyone's choices. I'm here to provide information for side effects from those choices, side effects from other people's choices, and for recipes and ways for you to always stay the healthiest, the happiest, and the most effective part of this great awakening that we're going through right now. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Welcome back to the show. She is back. I'm so excited. I love this woman so much, Dr. Christiane Northrup. If you're finding this on YouTube and you were searching her, just a little note, this is my show, which means you're probably going to hear me talk. Not as much today because I don't have the information or experience, but I'm going to ask questions and I might have a story or two. So if you don't like me, totally cool. Where can they find more of you?
My Telegram channel, but everything is drnorthrup.com. If you go there, the big old website, I have a blog. I have, and I tell people where to go, but the sort of, the censored material tends to go on Telegram. And, a little bit on Rumble. I'm trying to work with other things. Unified.com, Jason Shirka's channel. We're doing stuff on there. And a thing called The Shift begins this coming weekend. So it's April 3rd and 4th. And this is like a big summit with, Kevin Jenkins and Alex Zeck and Mickey Willis and, Judy Mikovits, all the players, 100% free. So it's Unified, The Shift, and you just sign up for it. And I think you're going to love it. I met Zev Zelenko there. I'd never met him. And we did a Zoom together with Scott McKay as the moderator on what is the medicine of the future kind of thing. Plus, I wanted to ask Dr. Zelenko, how'd you come up with that Zelenko protocol back in April of 2020? And, how did all of this work? And have they tried to take your license away in New York State? So it was a great conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I want to welcome everybody who's listening on the podcast. So as you probably already know, we are also on video. So come on over to jjfilzanes.tv if you want to see the video. She's a woman that needs no more introduction because you've heard it 4 more times on my show already. And so if you don't know her and you're living under a rock, it's totally cool. But just listen to the podcast and you'll hear the intro, and below this video will be her bio. So today's conversation came out of me wanting to talk about what has happened in the news with, not the news, forget the news. Don't listen to your news. It's paid for. What's happened in medicine in terms of the aftermath or the shedding or the side effects, so to speak, of what not the majority, but a lot of people in the population have been doing to their bodies because it's been recommended. And there's always some kind of side effect, right? And now some of the side effects we're not going to know for possibly years to come. Maybe some we do now, but there's been a conversation around a certain protein that has been an off gas. And I wanted to address that because people have been talking about it here. Like here in Ojai, there's a woman with a company and she makes products and she's got this, it's a protein protocol. And there's a word before that, right? An S protein protocol. And it's made from pine needles. And when I met with her, so anyway, and I said, well, before we talk about that on my show, I need to go back and educate people. So that's why I reached out to you and said, would you be willing to come and talk about this? I know it's not new. I saw you talk about it 6 months to a year ago, but I've never done a show on it. So let's talk about the side effects for people who haven't been, what's a word we can use that doesn't get me taken down? That haven't been.
That don't know. I mean,
don't
know. This hasn't crossed their path. It's interesting to me what crosses our paths and when. I mean, there are musicians and songs that I have never heard of. And then I find out that, what they've been singing and all that has like a huge following. I'm always amazed by that. Like I never heard the band Queen. I never heard of Mercury. No, this is what I want to tell you. Never even heard of them until 5-6 years ago, maybe 10. It's like that was not in my frequency. I never really heard Jimi Hendrix until way later. And I'm watching a documentary about him. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, this man was a direct channel from God. I mean, whoa. During the time when that music was really big, like Freddie Mercury and Queen and all of that, I'm basically in the hospital doing surgery, head down, have 2 little kids, and did not know anything about popular culture. I never heard Pink Floyd until I went to, they had one of those cover bands that was going around, and it was like the last thing that I ever did at the big performance center in Portland, Maine, before the whole thing started, with the masks, and now you got to sit every other seat, and I won't be going there anymore in this lifetime. So anyhow, what I want to say about that is it's perfectly possible that some people have not heard about this protein. And this protein, first of all, you need to know that the inoculations that people have been having include, if they get the one with this protein, and some of them don't have it, so you need to know that, there are 50 billion of these proteins injected into the body. And this protein in and of itself has a patented sequence of mRNA in it that was patented several years before March of 2020. And David Martin will tell you all about that. So that means everyone who's had the inoculation has a bit of patented nucleotide in their body that then intercalates itself into the DNA within 6 hours by a process called reverse transcriptase. So within 6 hours, the DNA in your liver is now changed to something that's been patented. And there's reverse transcriptase in the ovaries as well. And so if the ovaries are active at the time of the inoculation, they might take this stuff on, or it could get into the eggs, the potential eggs for a potential human. So we have some science now that women who've had the inoculation, let's say they give birth to daughters, and then the daughter would have that little thing in her body, which could cause her ovaries to shut down prematurely. And we call that premature ovarian failure. We have studies from 2015 called shedding of oncogenic products and all. So this was known in the literature with specific kinds of inoculations. And they used the same approach to sterilize mice and, to go about doing these genocide for mice kind of thing. And so we have the technology where one group of parents gets it, and then they pass that down to the offspring. So the other thing is this: Dr. Sherry Tenpenny has published what are called 40 MOI, 40 mechanisms of injury from this particular protein. And you can get that on drtenpenny.com. It's all from the peer-reviewed literature. And so that particular protein can cause blood clots, neurologic disorder. Here's the reason. It cross-reacts with 24 different human tissues. So it's kind of like, okay, I want to give you an example of that because people might be able to relate. People who are allergic to cats, let's say, will often find that they don't do very well with gluten or dairy. But when you get rid of the dairy, let's say, then they're no longer allergic to cats. It's like a cross-pollination, a cross-reaction. So a lot of people now have been injected with a patented protein that then can cross-react with 24 different human tissues. We have all the science on that. But you probably don't know about it because in the package insert of that particular inoculation, and this kind of makes you laugh because, if you've ever gotten a package insert, they're very complicated. Let's just say for birth control pills, right? And that's like a whole PhD just to have a look at what's in your birth control pills. And they have for the pill, thromboembolic events, stroke. They've got everything in there. This particular package insert is blank. Like, why did they even bother putting the piece of paper in there? I mean, that's a lot of trees that did not have to die. So we've got a blank package insert, so you don't know what's in there. The biggest concern is that particular type of protein, that little section, cross-reacts with what's called syncytin. Syncytin is believe it or not, it's from an ancient virus that causes cells to fuse, and it is the basis for the human placenta. And that is why those women between the first week and the 20th week of pregnancy, if they get this protein into their body through an inoculation, they've got an 80% miscarriage rate, 80%. So we're seeing miscarriages. You call them a miscarriage, by the way, in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. That's a miscarriage. Beyond 12 weeks, that's a second trimester loss. And those are very rare, or they used to be. They're not very rare now. And we have reports from Canada, Dr. Nagazi, with 86 stillborns in 5 months, whereas usually it's 5 in an entire year. And as an OBGYN, when I delivered babies for years, I can remember about 2, maybe 3 stillborns in my entire career. It's very, very rare, but not anymore. And it might be, and I remember being on a Zoom with Simone Gold, and she was, and none of us knew any of this. We just knew we were seeing fishy things. So she'd talk about the placenta of a patient she knew that once it was on ultrasound, you can kind of see the health of a placenta. Is it well? Is there a lot of good vasculature? Is the blood flow good? Well, then you can see when the placenta starts to get old, and it's an IUGR placenta, meaning intrauterine growth retardation. So the blood vessels shut down. It's kind of saying, okay, kids, the cafeteria is closed and you better get out of here because you're not getting fed anymore. So in those cases, you try to deliver the baby early because it's not getting what it needs in utero. So we started to see a lot of that stuff. The other thing we were seeing, which was very odd, and this was in April of 2021. So right after the inoculation started to come out in a big way, we were seeing little girls begin to have bleeding. Let's say that they spent the weekend with their grandparents, 18-month-old baby girl, spent the weekend with her grandparents, having vaginal bleeding. 90-year-olds starting their period again, vaginal bleeding. I had one friend from California. She sort of bled straight for 3 months. We had evidence from the VAERS network of 2 little girls who died from vaginal hemorrhage. Now, they hadn't had the inoculation. Also, Dr. Jessica Rose is an expert on the VAERS database. That is her thing. I mean, she went over to Israel to surf. She's Canadian. I've never heard of going to Israel to surf, but that's what she did. And she lives there. And she said, I was kind of bored because you couldn't do anything. So I decided to make the VAERS database my thing. And she's a mathematical, statistical genius. She likes raw data. She likes to tell you what's going on. And she started to see that they were removing the deaths of children from the VAERS database. And only 1%, maybe 10% of all of the adverse events are even reported. It is an obsolete database. I mean, all right, let's just step back a moment. Can you imagine if you shop on Amazon, they probably know the color of your underwear, right? But if you are the United States Public Health Service, then wouldn't you think, with all of the funding, all of these massive amounts of money, that they could have upgraded the VAERS database? One would have thought, but of course, there are not massive amounts of money. Pfizer made, 21 billion in the third quarter of 2021. I think I've seen the figures, how many more billionaires were created from this whole thing. So this protein also does something else, which I think people should know about. And we've got some cases of this now that are cropping up. And Stephanie Seneff of MIT talked about this way back. And she said, when you get an inoculation and then you get those mRNAs coming around into your body, they go right to the spleen. And in the spleen, they become programmed to be immune system cells. And from there, they can go to every organ in the body. And they were creating what's called prions. Prions are abnormally folded proteins. And these go right to the brain and can cause what's called Jakob-Creutzfeldt disease. There's no cure whatsoever. Or mad cow. It's also called mad cow disease. And it's a prion disease. So we're starting to see that. And I'm wondering if this has to do with the predictive programming from the CDC website, Prepare for the Zombie Apocalypse. I just read a case study of a man whose wife had this. She died very, very soon thereafter, but as this was happening, as her brain was being destroyed, there were some incidents that were very weird. Like they'd be at a restaurant and she'd say, something's wrong. We just have to go home. And then she just sort of went downhill very, very quickly. So I have a feeling we may see more of this. And my prediction is that we're going to see about 20% of the population is going to be in a weird kind of zombie apocalypse situation where they're not going to track things right. They may be angry. They may not have any idea about reality. I think at this point, what we know from the mass formation, which has been talked about, the mass formation, hypnosis, psychosis going on in the culture. So it comes from when you take a group of people, you isolate them, you do the Biderman's chart of coercion, and then you scare them to death for 2 years with the ticker tape along the bottom of the TV, with case counts, with a test that anything over 30 as a cycle threshold is a false positive. We were using 40 in our state of Maine. So everybody is terrified. And then they believe exactly the opposite, which is, oh, thank God, our CDC is keeping us safe. Our governor is keeping us safe. I don't know if you remember at Christmas, we had Christmas ornaments of Fauci dressed like a deity. In Maine, we had Nirav Shah. In Shah We Trust. Keep calm and follow Dr. Shah. And he was the head of our Maine CDC. We also found out that in April of 2021, he became president of ASTHO. ASTHO is a national organization of public health officials in every state. And they're the ones, that organization determined what they were going to do for these measures, these public health measures. So that included contact tracing, social distancing, the little circles at the grocery store, masks, and then sites for inoculations. So he became head of the whole thing, even though he had a nefarious background at the University of Illinois. He was head of the Illinois Public Health when the Legionnaire's disease thing happened, and they had to pay out $6.7 million to the guys who got that. And he never showed up at the hospital for 12 days. So then he came here, and interestingly, he becomes head of this whole thing in the United States in April of 2021. His wife gets a $21.3 million NIH grant for her PCR test company called Minute Molecular. Now, what I say to people is, I am not saying there's a conflict of interest. I'm saying it's curious and probably someone would want to investigate that. So what do we have now? We've got these people scared to death, and in the mass psychosis, if you're in that, right, and you are terrified, you don't have much blood going up here to the critical thinking centers, the logical thinking centers. You are too scared. So the masks and the inoculations and the social distancing and the incessant hand washing, those are anxiolytics. Those are solutions to your constant panic. So when someone like I come along and I say, oh, you don't need any of that, it's like taking away someone's pacifier. Of course they're angry. This was the thing they were counting on to keep safe because they're so terrified. And that's where we are currently. So a kind of traumatized population. By the way, in children at this point, we have speech and developmental delays, the likes of which we have never seen, because the children born in March of 2020 are now 2 years old, and they've never seen normal adult faces. So speech pathologists, speech therapists are telling you these children can't make the P sound. They don't know what it's supposed to look like. And meanwhile, under cover of darkness, the CDC changes the developmental milestones of babies so that walking, crawling, talking, those are all delayed now as though that's normal. So when you come across a child that has never had any of this, no masking, no inoculations, the child seems like a freaking genius. And as my friend, Dr. Larry Pilevsky, a pediatrician, says, they're not geniuses, they're normal. You're just not used to seeing normal, because at this point in history, if you go to the CDC childhood vaccination schedule, 25 different shots by the age of 1 year old. And we begin everyone's life with 99% of all newborns get a hepatitis B shot. And the Hep B shot contains 14 times the allowable amount of aluminum. And by the way, that's a neurotoxin. And it's not the same. People say, oh, heavens, you can eat food from an aluminum pan. It goes right through your system. No, we're talking injected into the bloodstream with substances that carry it right across the blood-brain barrier. Polyethylene glycol, polysorbate 80. So we're talking about here one little protein that's patented that changes the body. But what I want people to know is that this agenda has been going on for decades. This is not a new, right now, I think they've updated the CDC childhood vaccination schedule to 79. And they're trying to bring in this new one, and they've changed the definition of a vaccine. So Merriam-Webster, the new definition is gene modification. That's what a vaccine is. And they've changed the definition of anti-vaxxer to someone who opposes mandates. But this is not new. The CIA invented the term conspiracy theorist, right? And the Rockefeller Foundation and the AMA, which they founded, American Medical Association, invented the word quack. So here we are. Here we are.
I have questions that are personal, as well as, people that are listening that are, probably thinking similar things to me. Right. First, on a personal level, I want to ask, and I've asked other physicians this too. I said, I don't have to participate in this, do I? I mean, can I just opt out to, not do any of these things? I don't, for both a child as well as for myself. And I work for myself. I never need to leave my house pretty much. Right. So, and you're not taking me to a hospital under any circumstances, unless like literally I'm unconscious, broken in half, bleeding out my, something super extreme. Other than that, I want nothing to do with the hospital ever. So it becomes this, and I know, it's why you decided you weren't going to come here, but you did, luckily for us, because I got to meet you in January.
That was fun. I have to say, I liked the helicopters going over. I mean, okay, everybody, I just want you to see the ridiculousness of this, that Biden calls me and my 11 other colleagues murderers. And the truth of the matter is, I am a very benign postmenopausal woman in Maine living with 2 cats and my adult daughter who escaped from New York City. And I really, the fact that is considered so dangerous actually shows you that the science of power versus force is absolutely true. That when you are vibrating in the highest of compassion and truth and righteous anger, you are in fact quite dangerous to darker energies that would enslave humanity. You're kind of dangerous to them because you can see it. Back in 2020, I had the phrase going on in my head all the time, which was, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And that's when it really, the mainstream press here in Maine. What do you call it? It's slander, defamation. I mean, if there were any lawyers who weren't so busy standing up for humanity, I would have, and we all would have, amazing defamation suits. But everyone's in on it. The mainstream media is, all of the law firms that I have used are in on it. They're in on the whole thing. So we're at a big turning point. And if someone thinks I'm dangerous, I have a neighbor who thinks I'm dangerous. I was taking a walk last weekend. This is always shocking to me. And my friend I'm walking with says, "Hey, you're cleaning up your wood pile, sure sign of spring." And he didn't hear him, so he repeats it. And the guy looks and he says, "Oh, I see who that is. If I'd known it was you, I wouldn't have been so friendly. You are the Satan of misinformation, and you're not welcome here." Now that's within walking distance of my house. And that comes from the mass psychosis. It's like, wow.
First of all, my heart goes out to you, and I have been very careful. And I told you this when I met you. This is all very scary. Sorry for all of us, because when you put yourself out there and you know that you have truth behind you and you have science behind you, that kind of hatred, which it comes out of fear, and you know that, but still, it's still, there's only so much a human can take, right? And when people are they're part of the brain that's survival, logic and reason and intuition is offline. And one of the psychics that I had on the show told me that this world has been run by and is being run by newer souls. So we're not at a disadvantage, but we're at not an equal number of old souls versus new souls on this planet right now, especially those in power. And so that comes along with, again, that underlying, very easily triggered, very easily manipulated fear base that newer souls come in with. And so it's, while I know, and I loved that post, I did share that one that you put on Instagram about, we see your reset, and we raise you a great awakening. We raise you a great awakening. I'm like, yes, right. But straddling that balance, like I had that conversation with Jeff, right? Straddling that balance of how much do you put yourself out there? And it's not even because it's an opinion, or so what if it's an opinion? It's like, we're in communist country now, because it's like, you can't even have an opinion because you'll be shunned for it. And we were talking today on our hike about how this has happened in history forever, right? Witches being burned at the stake, churches burning books because they didn't want you to read things that would change your mind about something. And, because of the technological age that we're in, and the advanced age we're in, and the rapid fire of information that people get, they just automatically assume it because they don't want to be responsible. They don't want to learn anything. They don't want to be challenged. They want to believe that people have their best interests in mind. And it's not even best interest. There's just people, like you said, that just don't know. And sometimes there's an awakening that may or may not happen. I've been sitting on the truth is coming, the truth is coming, the truth is coming. And in the meantime, what can I do? And how do I help people? And how do I help myself or protect myself? And again, just say, hey, for all of you that want to do all these things, cool on you, but just know the information's not right. And maybe take a little responsibility in learning something and asking some questions. That's what science is asking questions, revisiting things, looking at different points of view. And currently in this day and age, we are not allowed to have another opinion than what is being bought and sold to you every day, which should be a red flag for communism. But
it's right? More than that. It's more than that. It's the enslavement of humanity. So what each of us must do is remember who we are. Remember who we are. We are genetic royalty, says Alex Collier, the Andromedan contactee. I love his work. And our superpower is our ability to imagine the world we want to live in and to use that creative power. And so when you go out now, remember, for me, as opposed to most mere mortals, I have been on the front lines of holistic medicine and have been under the gun for my entire career to a large extent, waiting for them to pull my license for things like delayed cord clamping, for things like questioning childhood vaccinations, for things like delivering a baby into warm water, for questioning the Gardasil shot, for telling people that they could heal through food. I mean, that's been my whole career. What's different about this is that all those people who are on that same page with me, the yoga teachers, the raw foodists, the vegans, all the people suddenly turned. They suddenly turned because of this very clever thing called wokeness, where you are either virtue signaling or you're offended. You're virtue signaling or you're offended. But think about how it started. Every kid gets a prize just for showing up. So therefore, we have probably 2 generations now who don't know how you deal with disappointment. They don't know how to deal with loss. No one should have done that for me. I'll tell you when it started on steroids. When Trump was elected and Yale had a safe room for undergraduates where they were serving them hot chocolate and whipped cream so that they could get by when this candidate won the election. What kind of message is that? The generation, my dad was quite old during World War II, and he went over to do facial surgery in a MASH unit with guys whose faces were blown up. The people much younger than him were the ones storming Omaha Beach at the age of 18. So have a look at that, where a sperm count has gone down 60% in the last 50 to 60 years. So I was talking to Kevin Jenkins about he calls me up and he goes, I just think it's fantastic that Will Smith stood up for his wife. Now we know, okay, that's a whole psyop. That's don't look over here at Hunter Biden's laptop. Look at this Oscar moment that clearly they staged. I mean, give me a break. But you can take something from everything. And Kevin said that policies have systematically weakened the Black family, systematically weakened the Black family. So we have all these women with, 3 baby daddies and all the rest of it. And he said, if you want to see what the war is, it's on virile men who stand up for women and children, not beat them. We're not talking about patriarchal control, but men who stand up to protect women and children. I started to go, and this is like way off something I would never do, but I found this church in South Portland, and I can tell you the Holy Spirit is there. I walk in and I want to cry. So I just go with that. Okay, thank you. If that's Jesus, I'm going there. Anyway, the pastor has all the men stand up last Sunday. And he goes, your sisters, your wives, your mothers need you to stand up. And I'm telling you, when you have a man who is standing up for you, everything changes. The reason that I could testify in front of the Maine legislature about vaccine mandates is that at that particular time, the love of my life said, do this. You have all the data you need. I will vet it out for you. And who was he? Professor Emeritus of Epidemiology and Public Health, had been all over the world with the WHO. And God said, we're going to give you this. We're going to give you this. So there's not one shred of doubt in you that you know what you're talking about. Because my entire career, I have been marginalized, vilified. People in the 80s didn't even believe in the mind-body connection. I've been on all the shows, Oprah and NBC Nightly News and all of that. And most of those things have basically been a war. Prove it to me. Prove it to me. It's like the left hemisphere fighting for dominance with something that every human can feel in their gut, but they've been talked out of it. So I had a man standing for me, so I could go and do that. In the same way that my father said to me when I was like 10, I'm looking at a bunch of books. I said, is this too old for me? And he says, nothing is too old for you. So we need that divine masculine back. And it has been under attack. I mean, chemtrails in the air, fluoride in the water, calcifying the pineal gland, the third eye, the way God comes into your body, GMO foods. You name it. There's been a war on humanity for a long time. And as Dr. Lee Merritt said, we are in World War III. This is the war on the human DNA. But remember, the American Revolution was won with just 3.5% of the population agreeing that that was a good idea. Only 3.5% of the population. So remember, just a few people who are really dialed in and are in their heart, but also in touch with righteous anger. When the innocence of a 4-year-old is being threatened, you can be sure that I will say something. Okay, so that creates an electromagnetic field from your heart that's 5,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic field of fear. And so there's just a few of us walking around joyfully and with compassion, holding the line. That's all it's going to take, because when we even walk down the beach, walk into a grocery store, from the time this whole thing started, and I take a walk in my neighborhood, no mask ever, and I'm smiling and waving. So chances are very good that I have waved to this guy numerous times. And I know that his life is a living hell. I also know it's not my job to save him, and that's taken me a long time. And it's not my job to feel bad about myself, but it's not my job to save him. In fact, what I'd like to say to your listeners, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. It's the same what I tell to men, by the way, if they're looking for a woman to be with. Don't go for the ones who are frowning because you think you can save them or you think you can help them. Don't go near the ones with the puss. Don't do it.
At the beginning, March, April, May, when I was still in shock that we were having this conversation because of all the science that we already have, right. I in my community, I had people who in the same, taking the position of not realizing the magnitude of what was in store and the fight and the planning that went into this and the detailed and so I remember coming up with, I was rollerblading. I was still living in the South Bay and before we bought this house. And I remember saying to myself, because I get downloads when I work out, when I'm outside, when I'm in nature all the time. And I remember saying to myself, if they're not asking, they're not listening. And right. So I put that out there like all the time. And I have a new client who came to me through Dr. William Davis, and she's dealing with a lot of what resonated with her was all the emotional work that I'm doing to help heal disease. In fact, I just got another testimonial yesterday from a listener who took my strengthening intuition class, and she had MS, diagnosed with MS, saw a bunch of people, bought my intuition course, and memory started to resurface about sexual abuse. And she basically did all the work, and now she doesn't have MS. Now she can't get a neurologist to say she doesn't have MS, but no more symptoms. And it was all 100% emotional work. And so she said, I want to thank you. And I want to help. I want to help people do more about this. So that phrase, so that client came to Dr. Davis, she's like, because she's working with a lot of people. And she said, I heard this somewhere and it was really good. She goes, if they're not asking, they're not listening. I was like, that was me. I said that. That was my phrase.
It came back. Yes. Right. I love that. I'm like,
that. But it's true. And I didn't know how emotional I was going to get on the show today, because I feel for you and I feel for me, because it is when you're coming from your heart and you're wanting to help people, especially the people that are closest to you, my parents. Oh my God. Yes. I can't even go there.
Yes.
Yes. I lost my shit. Oh, I lost my shit in a way. I had to mourn their death because I was like, I don't know where else to go with this, and talk about the ultimate lesson in letting go of control, the ultimate lesson in surrendering, the ultimate lesson in saying, I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of others' death. I might be sad. This is something I'm going to have to make peace with and really surrender on a really deep level. But, one of the things to sort of circle back, because I want to give people, I want to talk about, and I'm thankful for everything that's come out of your mouth, because everything you've said, besides hope, I wonder if other listeners are crying. I mean, I've been crying off. I muted myself while she was talking. If you see the video, you see me with a tissue, because it's so, it's like when you know something and it's a knowing, it's a deep, deep knowing. Yeah. I had my mastermind over the weekend that we had a conversation about faith the word faith. And I'm not a big fan of the word faith, actually, because to me, faith has a little bit of doubt, and faith has a story to it, and faith has a hope to it. And I said, no, there's a knowing. And I said, and that's what knowing has no doubt. Knowing, when you know something, you don't need anyone to prove anything to you. And that's how I have been forever with Dr. Bruce Lipton's work and biology of belief. I never even read the damn book for a long time, because I'm like, that's all I needed to hear. Biology of belief, done, check. What else do you need to know? What else do you need to know?
That's so true. Yep.
You don't have to convince me of that. And then when this whole thing started, again, a knowing, then I'm like, no, I have a knowing, and I don't need proof. I don't need anyone to tell me, but so many people do. And that's why we have the show. And that's why, for those of you that are out there feeling alone and doubting and wondering, and again, this has been talked about, this sort of shedding and this off gassing. Now, is it, just to get technical, is it the people who, because I remember you talking about it on videos. I was watching those videos where people were postmenopausal, having periods. And I didn't know about the girls. That just wrecks me. But in terms of what we can do about that. So back to this pine needle protocol, because I guess Judy Mikovits had something, although again, she kind of ripped it off. Is that something, because I have a whole like bath and tea and spray, and I have the whole pine protocol. Would that be like, what else can people do who stayed intact in their bodies and didn't add any extra things into their bodies, yet are around and exposed to people that did? Okay.
Now, I don't want anyone to be afraid. So what you're talking about, the white pine needle or pine needles, that's the shikimate pathway. Star anise and fennel seed are also really good. So is dandelion. There's so many things in nature that are shikamates. The other thing David Avocado Wolf says that will save our lives is black foods. Anything black sesame, like peanut butter, only it's black sesame paste, black beans, black sesame, all kinds of just black foods, black
charcoal.
Charcoal. Yes. That's the other thing. This is called a mud mix. And this I learned from Gene Decode. So it's 1 tablespoon of activated charcoal, 1 tablespoon of bentonite clay, and then a teaspoon of diatomaceous earth and a teaspoon of zeolite. And you mix that together and you drink it. You can mix it in juice or just put it in water. And if you do that every night for, let's say, a couple of weeks, now at first it might cause constipation, so go slow. But this is the way to clear things from the intestinal system. There's so many detoxes. The MMS protocol, the Jim Humble protocol, is very, very powerful. The protocol 1000, and it's cheap. It is so cheap. And then you can do the MMS bath, where you put the 2 things, the sodium hypochlorite and the other thing, 18 drops of each, and you mix them up till it turns amber, stick it in your bath. Dr. Carrie Made swears by Clorox baths, 1/2 cup of Clorox in a bath. Got to be Clorox brand. You soak for 20 minutes. That's very helpful. Now, remember that a lot of these things that were called shedding or transmission are actually EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, from the kind of towers that went up like mushrooms in March of 2020. And our 5 docs doctor, Dr. Lee Merritt, she and her husband got very sick when a new 5G streetlight went up right in front of their house. And they had some weird pathogen get in their bodies as a result of that. So there are things that you can do. Now we're in the tinfoil hat category. Everyone would like to deny the adverse effect of the electrification of the earth. But Tom Cowan, in his book, The Contagion Myth, talks about, makes a case that every major epidemic has been associated with a new level of electromagnetic radiation. We know that Wuhan was the first city to roll out 5G. And you probably remember those people just dropping in the streets, because there's something about that degree of radiation that will take the hemoglobin out of the red blood cells. And at the beginning of this thing, there were doctors reporting live from Ground Zero, New York City, saying that This doesn't feel like it's a flu infection. This is more like high altitude pulmonary edema. Hey, these people need oxygen. Well, there was something about what's going on where the hemoglobin was not getting oxygenated. And they didn't need to be on a ventilator. They just needed to be breathing some oxygen. Plus, back then, if you remember, we were telling people, there's no test, don't come back until you can't breathe. When in God's green earth has the medical profession ever said to someone, wait until you're near death and don't come in until then? I remember this because my guy, Ron, at that point was, making it the turning point to leave the planet. So I happened to be in doctor's offices a lot at that time. And I remember thinking, all right, if this is so bad, where's the test? Then I'd call up my buddies at the American Holistic Medical Association. I'd ask them about the test. They would send me all these papers about the test, and none of it made any sense to me. There were amazingly erudite explanations for something that made no sense, because this test was never designed to be used for the way it's being used. And interestingly, Carrie Mullis, who invented it, left the planet in December of 2019. There's been all kinds of stuff like that. So what you have to do at the end of the day is remember sunlight, vitamin D, and being in the sun is one of the most powerful thing you can do. Bare feet on the ground, or leather-soled shoes, because then the negatively charged electrons will come up through your feet. I just learned the soul of the body is in the sole of the feet. That is why they put the baby's footprint on the birth certificate. It is to signify that the state now owns the soul of the baby. And if you don't believe me, read the Maternity Act of 1921. Read the Maternity Act of 1921, when they started to sell our birth certificates as a bond for 20 years of labor. That's why the adult age of consent is 21, because you've now given your 20 years of labor as a bond. There's so much stuff that we don't know. I mean, all of our history, it's sort of like if you see it on CNN or New York Times, the truth is the opposite. And yeah. you can just use that in your life. And then you get together with other like-minded people. And here's what we know. You decided to be here for the Great Awakening, for the greatest show on earth. Only the very, very most stalwart souls decided to be here. And then that includes all the people, the normies who are in the closet with the two masks, including them. So we got to take the 10,000 foot view. But yes, every time we go to a meeting, a Maine stands up in Al's head, she's got a big vat of pine needles, star anise, and fennel tea. So those are good. We've also had amazing results with homeopathy, with sound frequency, because when you get to out of the 3 dimensions into a different dimension, none of that stuff is ever going to harm you. I'm on planes all the time. Now, I had whatever this is twice back in the day. I've never had a test. Why would I do that? And so I would just say, do not be afraid. The one time I would tell you, do not hang around inoculated people. By the way, we do not know, this is important, we do not know how long the body after an inoculation continues to make the thing. We don't know. Robert Malone told me they've only tested it up to 60 days. But we do know that this protein is layered into your organs. It's layered into the placenta, and your innate immune system is always trying to destroy those cells that have this foreign protein in there. So when you're pregnant or when you want to get pregnant, that's when I would say, go out somewhere where there isn't much of that. That's the one time. Like I wouldn't want to live with in-laws, both of whom have had the inoculation.
That's great advice. I mean, I was just on a plane I had my mastermind in Myrtle Beach, and then we came back, and the majority, doesn't matter. But anyway, I have the Pine Protocol, and I'm going to be doing it, and I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah.
I live with my partner. We live on half an acre in Ojai. It's always sunny. I'm outside a lot. I hike a lot. I'm outside. So yeah, but for people that don't have access to that or haven't valued that up until now, this is the kind of advice, because it isn't meant to do what everyone else is doing on the opposite side and scare you into doing stupid things. This hopefully will wake you up to doing smart things. And as far as I know, I haven't had it. And if I have, I never knew it, and don't plan on, but whatever. I was in Italy when it happened. I've been on planes ever since, went to Greece, went to Mexico a couple of times. So, but live my life and do my things. Actually, here's the Pine Protocol spray.
Yeah,
and I'll link it in the show notes, everybody, if you want to do the whole Pine Protocol to have as a way to sort of help your body. In terms of the homeopathic remedy, though, you said you've been having good results with homeopathy. Is it a specific brand? Is it a specific company?
Like any really good homeopathist, it's individualized.
Got it.
So remember that homeopathy is actually taking care of the soul. And so the remedy that is chosen has to do with you in particular. So we've got a number of people who practice homeopathy, and oftentimes when nothing else has worked, the homeopathy works.
Absolutely. Well, I have and everyone knows I have Jeannie. So she's one of the physicians that I work with. And I was taking it sort of like with a height, like influenzicum from boron. Right. Like, so, and I even know that here locally, they were making CV, like whatever the strain was, they were doing homeopathy versions of that.
Yeah. See, but what it's going to be, which is so exciting to me, it's going to be very grassroots. So you in Ojai will have a different deal going on than we have in Owl's Head, Maine. And that's how we're going to grow the new earth. When we say grassroots, we're not kidding. It's going to be different where you are, different where I am. And, like locally grown food. I remember in the early days when I was learning about macrobiotics, macrobiotics actually means to be in the here and now. You eat what's grown in the here and now. That's macrobiotics, period. It's not about brown rice and Georgia sawa and seaweed and Japanese. It's not. It just happened to come from there. But at its heart, it is about being in the place where you are and eating what's grown there in as much as possible. And then I'm not going to get myself all in a swivet if I eat an orange in Maine in the winter. I'm not going to get that crazy. The other thing I would say to people, stay away from fundamentalist thinking of all kinds, whether it is nutritional fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, any kind of fundamentalism. I swear to you, that way death is. Anytime someone gave me a book, that they wanted me to read, and it was, called The Way Out and whatever. And it's full of how evil and wrong meat is, eggs are, dairy is. And it's like, I've heard that all before. I get that. And then I know, because I watched it for years, my patients were the macrobiotic community of Boston. And I want to give you an example of how far that can go. All right. So this guy leaves a suicide note for his wife. And she goes and she finds him sitting on a log out in the woods. She says, "What's wrong?" He said, "I ate a ham and cheese sandwich and I didn't die." Because in the macrobiotic community of that time, they were told that eating meat and cheese that were poison and deadly.
Oh my
so
God.
He actually believed that if he ate a ham and cheese sandwich, he would die. Now, I would say there was an underlying condition that had nothing to do with brown rice or ham and cheese. But he later did commit suicide, much, much later. But the kind of person drawn to fundamentalism needs the formula this is going to save you. Just do this. And then you're into the Branch Covidians. I mean, come on, people. We can't do that. We cannot do that. God is in everything. In everything. So you don't want to live in fear. You don't want to walk in fear. But, okay, a friend of mine just returned from a family reunion. And every time she sneezes, she has a bloody nose. We know that is from those proteins because everyone in her family is a factory for that. And they've all been inoculated. So she took a couple baths and she's fine. By the way, Peter McCullough, what he always recommends is the betadine nasal wash or the hydrogen peroxide nasal wash. And that's very, very effective if you're worried about catching whatever this thing is. Okay. So, because at this point, right, we don't have colds or flu anymore. Those don't exist anymore, as you well know. We only have the one thing. That's what we've got. And it doesn't matter if you fell out of a plane and the parachute didn't open. That is what you died of. We all know that. So if you're still worried, and I'm shocked that people are still worried, they're worried about something with a 99% survival rate. You got to hand it to these deep state dark cult people.
What? And again, back to the new souls. It doesn't, you can say boo. And if it comes from the television and the news, they're buying it and they're not going back and seeing these changes on the websites. They're not up to, no one's really searching out another opinion. They're just taking it in because it's just a lot easier that way. I want to go back to the nasal wash for a second. What about colloidal silver?
Yeah, that's good too.
Okay.
The silver that I always use is from RNAreset.com. What is her name? That wonderful woman. She's like an expert, a world expert in magnesium. And her company is RNA Reset. And she makes a pico silver, which I love. And I just have it in a medicine dropper. But colloidal silver, that's a nasal spray. You can use that. It's great. Any of those things are really good.
Just going to decide if I publish you before or after my next interview with David that I've already done, David Wolf. And we did talk about some of this.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's great.
And on his Telegram, he says, S protein. I'm like, is this going to get me in trouble too? Is that a red flag? Cause he didn't even spell it out. He just put S protein. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should take the hint and not use that word because it's going to get me in trouble and prevent the truth and prevent information that people can either take or not take. Again, guys, if you don't believe me, again, if you're listening to the show and you've made it this far, you're on board. And if you haven't, because you just think this is all BS, that's fine. I don't care. You're not my people. And do what you want to do. I don't care. I've always said that it's not about controlling anybody or, this is information, take it or leave it. And if the world was as comfortable, when you're what's the Shakespeare thou dost protest like when you're
yes
when you're wrong. Yes, because when you're trying to defend something, you're defensive, and the people that know the truth don't need to be defensive because they know eventually the truth is going to come out. So I wanted to provide this for all of you because it's been in my realm of and world and with using this Pine Protocol and also speaking to what you can do about it. And I love that you gave us all kinds of different things to do. It's not just one thing, and also touching on the electromagnetic radiation that's been in question. And again, not even a lot of people know about that. And because you have to be following people who keep getting, what's the word, attacked, discredited by the mainstream
if you can
media.
Always tell that, the truth is basically those of us who have been censored, relentlessly. When you are over the target, the flak is the greatest. So the ones you've been told are the disinformation, whatever, that is invariably where the truth is, because if it weren't the truth, they wouldn't care. I mean, is anyone attacking the flat earthers? No.
Right.
No.
Right. And I was the mastermind. I finally have a man, my token man, Ned. Yay, Ned. And he said, when I told him I got censored, he's a libertarian. He said, I'm proud of you.
That's it.
I'm proud of you that you got censored. And I was like, okay, thanks. I'm not proud of me. I just want to get it out to the world. And that was a scary moment to be censored for the first time. So
yeah,
yeah,
it is. It is. Yeah.
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 Especially when the intent is positive. It's not, positive for people, positive, I mean, my heart is in the right place and you're getting your hand slapped. So I get it. So thank you again for coming on. And I know there's so much more I could always ask of you. But I know that this is what we want to help share. And I love we're on the same page, with Jeff and I talking about how do you stay in the heart-centered love space when you're, kind of challenging the norm and you're challenging it. It's hard for people, which is why they stay quiet, because it's not even about being liked. It's about being attacked. And it's about being attacked and not even allowed to have the conversation because of the height of this survival, caveman brain. We're not even in our logical conscious thinking. It's just, it's really, it's brainwashing and it's unfortunate. And at the same time, I want to keep connecting with. And so anybody that's connected to you, and when I had David on again, I mean, I talked to him like last week and I said, look, I'm not trying to gather more people in the world. I don't put myself out in areas where I don't know if we're of like mind, which is why I keep having multiple conversations with the same people, because our people, that's where we're sharing people, because we're all kind of on the same team. And he's like, oh, I'll share your stuff on my Telegram. I'm like, great, cool. Because I'm just trying to talk to the people who I know are looking for this. Again, if they're not asking, they're not listening. Don't try to convince anybody of anything. Find your people, stay with your people, stay healthy, stay positive, and know the truth is coming. And, and we can all help each other by, being in community with each other. Those that sort of know, we don't believe, we don't have faith. We know. We don't need to be convinced.
We know.
That's right. And we've known from the beginning, and we keep knowing, and nothing ever changes our knowing, except that we keep figuring out what to do and how to live in the highest vibration while staying grounded and not necessarily cutting off everybody we know, because it gets kind of hard when everybody is sort of on the opposite side. It's that heart space feels like, it's especially with my parents. I mean, gosh, I said to my mother, who are you? You wouldn't put Rogaine on your head, because years ago, not that I want her to do that, but because she was like losing some hair, and she looked at the box and it said could have adrenal failure. Yeah. And so she didn't do that. I'm like, I was like, I don't know who you are right now. Like but it's the fear. And it's also the compromise of, people think, oh, then I can't travel. I can't see my elderly parent who's in a home, and that's the restriction, or I'll lose my job, or all the things that people tell themselves. And so it's a great exercise for expansion right now. All of us who are here, like you said, have chosen this path to be here in this time and space, to be ready for the greatest awakening that hopefully this planet has ever seen. And to keep, Bruce Lipton was on again last week, and we talked about spontaneous evolution and sort of that need for us all to be in that space also, not just for ourselves, but for the planet. And that we don't want to be a part of the sixth mass extinction, but we're going to be if we don't do something about it. So, right?
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen, but a lot of people are leaving. And that's okay. It's okay. No one ever really dies. They just recycle. They're going to get to the other side. They're going to go, oh my God, what was I thinking? And then they'll come in as your grandchildren and be the greatest gift to the planet ever. So that's the way I see it.
One, something I just thought of that I keep telling cancer patients that I work with about death, because we're, if anyone's facing death or looking at or afraid of death or feeling a power over themselves of death, is something that an Abraham audio that I heard years ago. I'm talking 20 years ago. Death is the greatest orgasm ever. So just remember, for anyone who thinks they're fearing death, when you leave this life, the more resistance and fear that you had while you were here, on your way out will feel like the biggest orgasm of your entire life, because you just shoot right back into pure positive energy where you have no resistance to anything, and it's the greatest feeling ever. So please don't fear death, because it's going to be the best orgasm ever. So keep that in mind. So Dr. Northrup, again, please follow her on Telegram for truth or go to drnorthrup.com. And any other platforms that you do that don't act like Telegram?
We do the Instagram thing that's kind of fun, Unified, Rumble. I have actual good medical information on YouTube. I mean, it's like a very solid channel. And occasionally, I'll play the harp a little bit for people on Facebook. I mean, I've got a huge community on Facebook. We got over 500,000 people, and I'm so careful with it because I'd like to keep it. So here's what we know. New platforms are going to arise. New stuff is going to arise. We have the knowing. And as we hold the knowing and the electromagnetic field of the knowing, then the physical equivalent comes into form. And that's what we're all doing.
Yeah. And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Northrup. Please make sure to follow her if you're not already. And if you're a fan of hers and you like me, please follow me too. So thank you so much again, Dr. Northrup, for being here.
Thank you.